In this example, we're going to solve a quadratic equation using the completing the square method. The first thing I want to do in completing this square is to move the -5 over to the right hand side. We'll do this by adding 5 to both sides. Now, the next thing I notice is that the coefficient of my t squared is 3. We need this coefficient to be 1 in order for this completing the square to work. Therefore, what we're going to do is divide everything by that coefficient. We're going to divide each term by that coefficient. Once we have the coefficient of t squared, a 1, now we can move on to our next step. Here's our process. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this middle term here, or the coefficient of the t, and we're going to divide it by 2, which is the same as multiplying by 1/2. This is 4 over 6, which simplifies to 2/3. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take that 2/3 and we're going to square it. This number here is what we're going to add to both sides. The reason that we add it to both sides is because we can add or subtract anything from these equations as long as we do it to both sides. As long as you do anything to both sides, you're not changing the equation at all. Now what you're going to find is that this polynomial now will factor into t plus the number that we had from our first step, 2/3. And the reason that we use a plus sign is because this right here is a plus sign. That right there will tell you what sign goes in between the two terms. So again, the 2/3 we got from in our first step whenever we took 4/3 and divided it by 2. And now on the other side, we need to get a common denominator. Our common denominator is going to be 9. So we're just going to rewrite 5 over 3 as 15 over 9, and we do get this by multiplying the top and the bottom by 3. (15 plus 4) gives me 19. And now we can solve using the principle of square roots. Take the square root of both sides. Now I cannot take the square root of 19, so I'm going to leave that under the radical, but I can take the square root of 9, which is 3. And now we're going to subtract 2/3 from both sides. Oh, and also we want to make sure this is a plus or minus here. Because remember, when we take the square root, we can have a positive answer or we can have a negative answer. The last thing we can do is we can write this all over 3. Since it has the common denominator of 3, we're going to write this as -2 plus or minus the square root of 19 all over 3.